you, Sylvia. Oh, thank you. Patricia asked me earlier if I was going to be drumming, and I said, well, you can't play here without having me drum with you. It's kind of like, it's a given. We can't get rid of the drummer for some reason. We try, but he keeps pushing his way in. I think there's a scene in what is the Notting Hill, the movie Notting Hill. Anybody familiar with the movie Notting Hill? The movie. There's a scene in there where the Julia Roberts character comes in to buy a book on Turkey, to travel Turkey, and who's the actor? Hugh Grant. Thank you. Hugh Grant's character. He's telling her, you might not like this book or that book, and and she brings up one he's like, oh, this one here is autographed by the author. Actually, if you can find a book of his that's not autographed by the author, it's worth millions. Right? That just reminded me of that we can't get rid of the drummer. Anyhow, just hold on a sec here. I forgot to start my AI technology, so it can tell me whether I was good or bad after the No, I'm kidding. Yeah, there'll be plenty of opportunities here for me to find out how this went today, won't there? So I was interested in this idea of strength to love, and it was kind of like I was thinking about it. Could you move from strength to love? And then there's also the idea of the strength to love, when it might not feel like it's within me in that moment to actually bring love to something or have love in this moment. And then as I was doing some research, I came across a talk by Martin Luther King Jr. about that very thing of strength to love. And then so I took out some comparisons of sort of unity teachings and Martin Luther teachings, and so I'm going to read those, but I'm going to see if I can figure out how they actually work together. And we can all do that together, right? Because you're going to hear these things and you're going to formulate your own ideas around this. But this is kind of like a guide. There's 7 ideas here that I'm going to compare. And so bear with me as we work through this together. So number 1 is awaken to inner strength. Awaken to inner strength. And so this strength is not about physical force, but actually inner resilience. Right? And you might hear a lot of that. I know I have heard a lot of that word resilience over the last 5-10 years for sure, that we want to be resilient. And I know as bringing up my kids, parenting, there was this idea of how do you raise your kids to have resilience so that they can overcome the challenges that they're going to face when they step out into the world, right? Just like we had to face those. And so how can we build resilience? And so unity teaches that spiritual strength is the foundation for overcoming challenges. So spiritual strength. And so we have the 12 powers, which Judy's actually going to be teaching on for a number of weeks, the 12 powers. And strength is one of those powers. Now, the idea about these 12 powers is that they're always in us, whether we are consciously using them or not, right? So this idea is that we can bring it into a spiritual awareness that we have this power of strength, and it resides in our lower back. That's where, if we were to, place it in our body, that's where it would be, is in our lower back. And so we can call upon this strength in order to support us, just like our back supports us, to support us in times where we might need a little more from ourselves, right, to bring into the other 12 powers. And so you can think about, you can add strength to our will, we can add strength to our understanding, and we can add strength to strengthen our love, right? So you actually, as you awaken to the 12 powers, you can see that you can begin to pool them together to actually build resilience in ourselves, right? It'd be great if we could do it for others, but we can't. So we need to do that for ourselves. Now, what Martin Luther King said was the power to endure and act comes from a deep, unwavering faith. And so I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, how could that actually work with the idea of strength and the strength to love? Because faith is, if we look at unity, is a knowingness, right? It's a deep knowing that we know something about ourselves. And so when we begin to practice spiritually, to really tune in, we can take this knowing of ourselves and strengthen all areas of our life. And faith is not like belief. So I want to make a distinction here. If you have to believe in something, this is a question for you all. If you have to believe in something, is it real? Is it true? So let me give you an example. Do you believe in your mom and dad? I know my mom and dad, per se, right? That's an example. That's not a belief. There's no need to believe in it. There's a knowing that exists, as opposed to having to try to believe in something. And so I heard this week, and it's been rolling around in my head, this idea that belief is actually not faith. Faith is a deep knowing of something that you can hang on to and actually elevate in your life. Unlike needing to believe. And I think of that belief as like, oh, I just have to, if I just believe, right? It's almost like you're trying to convince yourself of something. It's not the same thing as knowing, is it? Does that make sense? Like when you know something, you just know it. There is no need to try to believe it. Number 2 is to understand the power of love. So love in its highest form, which you could think of as agape, that traditionally denotes a selfless, unconditional love, is a transformative force. So in unity, we look at love as this harmonizing. Love harmonizes and heals, bringing divine order to life. Okay, so love is located in our heart space. And again, we can call on this power when we're in moments where things are feeling a little bit unwilling to work with us. We can invite this harmonizing power of love. How could I respond to this from a place of love as opposed to some other emotion we might be feeling? Where we're trying, those other emotions, I'm thinking of anger. Does anger harmonize or divide? Right? So in those moments where we're angry or frustrated, the idea is that we call on this spiritual power of love to harmonize the situation. Not to harmonize what's going on out there, but to harmonize in here, in us, in you, in me, right? To bring it within ourselves so that we can now stand in a place of peace with ourselves, regardless of what's going on out there. And Martin Luther King says, love is an active force that resists evil without becoming evil. Right? If we're just turning over to be the exact thing as the other side that we might be up against, are we really doing anything different? Right? We're not. You can easily think of war as that. That's the great old argument. How does going to war stop fighting? It doesn't. So how can bringing that same energy to something actually move you forward in your life? So we can't always meet those things and with, I'm going to meet their force with their force. Not if we want our lives to work, at least in my mind. That's where we need to bring that idea of love. Number 3 is balance tough-mindedness with tenderheartedness. So strength without love can become rigid, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. You're just like going to power your way through everything, right? No compassion, no love for whatever, just wah! It's kind of like drumming. It's, I got to keep reminding myself, I got to pull it down a bit, just calm. Work with the other musicians. In unity, spiritual wisdom helps us blend strength and love in right action. So we use our power of wisdom to actually blend those two things together, to see this opportunity as a balancing act for ourselves, right? To not be too far one way or too far the other. Martin Luther King says, we must combine the toughness of the serpent with the softness of the dove, right? That those two elements are playing within us, and we must learn to combine them so that we can be in that place of harmony, harmonizing. And when you're in the presence of somebody who's like that, right? You get this feeling from people that have really come to a place where they're at peace. You can just feel it when you meet them. Anybody? Yes? Yeah? Yeah, you've had that experience, right? Number 4, courageously stand for truth and justice. Strength gives us the courage to challenge injustice. Strength gives us the courage to challenge injustice. It's hard to do, though, right? There's all that, what will that person think? Or what will that group say? Or what will they do as a result? It's sometimes hard to stand up in the face of injustice. In unity, truth is a spiritual principle that sets us free, is a unity principle. So by being the truth of who we are, we actually gain freedom from that. We don't have to. I remember listening to something, I don't remember who the speaker was, but it was this idea of, telling the little lies, and they build up, and then you have to remember the little lies that you told so that you can always keep telling the same story, and it grows and grows, and it becomes actually harder to keep it together because you can't remember all the BS that you were spreading, right? Whereas if you just told the truth, there's nothing to try to remember. It's just the truth. Sometimes that's really hard to do, right? Because we play in that world of this might hurt somebody's feelings, or I don't want to be that abrupt. So we might have to find ways to be truthful. But if we're always playing in that game of truth, there's never anything that we have to watch over our shoulder for. There's nothing that's going to come and bite us for, you said, and then you try to, no, it's not really what I meant, what I really meant, and then you try to reweave the story. Anybody? I'm not the only one, right? That's, okay. Yes. One person was willing to put up their hand with me. Just let you know, one. Martin Luther King says, those who act with love and strength can transform society. I think he was a pretty good example of transforming, right? Planting a really, really solid tree, not a seed, a tree of transformation that is still echoing today. Number 5, forgiveness as strength in action. So love empowers us to forgive, which is not weakness. Has anybody ever thought of forgiving as you're losing something, you're weaker, you're giving in? It's actually not that. It's deep strength to forgive. It requires something from us. In unity, we teach forgiveness dissolves negativity and opens space for divine good. So by forgiving either others or ourselves, we actually create an opening. We create an opening for something new to come in. It's like the power of release, right? Really, in a lot of times that I've done release work or used that power of release, it has shown up as forgiveness, as letting go. In a place of forgiveness, though, of really, truly forgiving. And I always think of that scripture where I think it's Peter says to Jesus, Master, how many times should I forgive my brother? 7? And Jesus replies, yes, 7 times 70. Yeah, in other words, the work in forgiveness might not be a one-time pass, right? It might take something from us to keep coming back to that forgiveness. Martin Luther King says, forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a permanent attitude. And just imagine what he went through, what he was standing for, that you would have to forgive over and over and over again, not just the same people, but so many other peoples and ideas. I didn't think I'd bring this up, but this just popped into my head. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine on Friday morning. I've been speaking to him every Friday for, I don't know, since 2018, I think. And he lives I've only met him once in person. He lives in Boston. And we met at this event, and he asked if he could call me every Friday. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And he's been a great resource for me. His name is Nitzan. And he helped me a lot, actually, in seminary class because he's Jewish. And he's from Israel originally. He lives in the U.S. And he knows the Bible, the Jewish Bible, like the back of his hand, right? What we would call the Old Testament. And so in my classes, actually, I was able to have these amazing conversations with him about what we were, sort of being taught as metaphysical interpretation, and then what he would have from his rabbis and years of study in Israel on the Bible. And so he said this, he was talking to me on Friday, and he brought up the idea that for him, as a Jewish man, and being a true Jew, he said that he lives his whole life with hatred and fear. That's just the way it is for Jewish people. There's actually sayings within the Jewish community about this idea that you actually have to work on not hating yourself because you're so hated around the world. And so, we talked about this, and I'm only sharing with this you because I was looking to try to understand that, and I realized in talking to him that I have no idea what that feels like. I have no idea what living like that would feel like. And I was, in looking at this talk and thinking about Martin Luther King, I was thinking the same thing. I can't imagine what that feels like to be on that side of wandering, walking in any store or anywhere on the street and thinking that people know and they don't like me right away, like to be the go-to. And we talked about that, and he actually, he actually commented that he appreciated the fact that I was that honest about it, that I didn't try to do anything other than just go, man, I have no idea what that feels like. And it was a humbling moment for me to actually think in those terms, to see that there's people in the world that's what life occurs like. Injustice anywhere. Forgiveness is not an occasional act, it is a permanent attitude. And that's sort of how I felt about that line from Martin Luther King. Number 6 is recognizing the oneness of humanity. Love unites, strength upholds, justice for all. So we have on one hand love that unites us and strength that can uphold justice for all. And we want to marry those two together in a blended, beautiful way, not to be righteous, right? Not to be condemning in that way, but to bring together and harmonize. And so in unity, we like to say we are all divine expressions of God connected in oneness. But do we really know what that means? Do you really know what that means when you think of oneness? And I ask this because it's really easy to throw around these terms like, oh, we're all just one. Yeah, And it's great in the moment, but do you really know what that looks like? And I'm asking, and not because I know, but really, what does that mean? Because we're so raised in a world of separation where we want to compartmentalize everything, right? We want to have a right or a wrong or a good or a bad on everything. And that's not oneness. That's division. Oneness is, if I were to, try to conceptualize it in language, oneness is the ability to have somebody in front of you screaming at the top of their lungs everything you would be opposed and still loving them, and being able to be in that and not join forces with that energy and anger, to see them as you. That is also you. Could you do that? Right? Could you be that source of oneness in the face of that? I don't know. I don't know if I could. I've never faced that. I'd like to think I would find that within me, that I would have my spiritual practice that would, strengthen me in those moments. Martin Luther King says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So anywhere that we allow that. So I just thought of this now. I read this book, the Diamond Cutter, and it was this idea of a Buddhist had his guru told his student for his next journey, he had to build a business, get involved in a business, and bring Buddhist principles to the business and watch it, nurture it to growth through using Buddhist principles. True story also. Anyhow, there's this one part of the book where the writer talks about this idea that if you own a business, so you can take the business and just make it your life, right? But if you own a business, and let's say you have a parkade where all your employees park, and then there's one area of the parkade in the lowest level of the parkade in the right-hand side or the north side of the building where almost nobody ever parks, ever, but there's a stairwell that goes up. And in that stairwell, the light at the bottom where nobody parks and nobody enters is burnt out. And you don't change the light bulb, you have just allowed the decay of your business to begin. Everything within us matters, right? How you do one thing is how you do everything. And so this principle of bringing that kind of thoughtfulness to your life and seeing how am I acting in every given instance is of huge importance. It may seem small, but it's not. And so having injustice anywhere, whether you want to take it as the treatment of others or an injustice within yourself, having it anywhere and it will show up everywhere. So we need to do that work. And finally, number 7, becoming a force for good. By embracing love and strength, we become agents of positive change. In unity, we affirm that divine love and strength guide our actions. Right? We want to affirm that I am being guided by this power of strength and this power of love. Martin Luther King said, real power is using strength to uplift others and build a just world. Using our power of strength to uplift others. I think there's a prayer or a song we sing that is, I shine my light so that others, and give permission for others to do the same. Or maybe that was that Marianne Williamson quote that we just had a few weeks ago. Yes. Quick, pull it up on the screen. Marianne Williamson quote. right? But when we shine our light, we give permission for others to do the same, right? That's what that's talking about. So I found this quote in the Bible from Romans 13:10. Divine love will bring your own to you. Will bring your own to you. Adjust all misunderstandings and make your life and affairs healthy, happy, harmonious, and free. Love, therefore, is the fulfillment of the law. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? To have that state of being healthy, happy, harmonious, and free. Yeah.